Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Daleen. I like to read and wanted to share my thoughts and experiences while reading those books and connect with other readers, hear their experiences, hopefully with the same books and other books, and discover new reads, and as well as just enjoy this hobby that is reading. Mostly I read fantasy, sci-fi, romance, thrillers, mysteries, and the occasional horror and classic or non-fiction. And yeah, so these are the books I read in October. I read 13 books, excluding manga and graphic novels. For this video, we'll just focus on the novels I read. And yeah, let's kick it off. The first book I've read was The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. And I enjoyed this a lot. So I started Wheel of Time about 2 months ago. I read a book every 2 months or so currently, and was pleasantly surprised with this series. I thought it was going to be old and not well dated, and it aged very well, and it reads very well. And book 2 was fun. It picks off basically a few days after the events in book 1, which is The Eye of the World, and the start is very fast, it hits the ground running, and I thought, like, here we go, this book is just gonna go. And then about 25% in, it slows down quite a bit, as Rand and his friends set out in the bigger world, and you get to experience their different stories. And Rand in the beginning annoyed me a little bit, because he tries to do the good thing, but he goes the wrong way, the right thing, and he goes the wrong way about it. And then he ends up, I'm going to avoid spoilers, it will be a spoiler-free video, but he ends up somewhere, and he meets a person, and all I got to think is, like, Rand, you're an idiot. Like, can't you see through what's happening here? You are an idiot. But yes, and then as they come into Carrion, also apologies if I mispronounce things, fantasy names and I don't sit around the same fire. But anyways, as soon as they enter the city of Carrion, it gets very much more political and slows down a bit. There's character building, there's story development. So it's not that it drags its feet entirely, it's just it slows down quite a bit, and it puts the necessary plot gimmicks in place, the plot lines in place, and then as soon as things start going again, they go. And I enjoyed it. The ending was very good. I was very much interested in the dynamic of the Mane, I'm just gonna say the Mane, with Egwene's storyline. That was very interesting, and I hope that gets explored more somewhere. And yeah, very good, very enjoyable read. Loved it, and would recommend to any fantasy lover. Really, really good. Already looking forward to book 3. Then my first mood read for the month was After the Races, which is a romance. It's from the Elsie Silver series. It's a first series that she wrote, which was before the Reckless Flawless books. She wrote 4 books, and this was good. I enjoyed it. It focuses on Billy and Vaughn. He basically inherits the family business, or goes into the different side of the family business, because their business has 2 sides, horses and mining. And he tries to save things, so he ends up hiring a horse trainer, and the story goes from there. But the star of this book is actually the horse, Didi. Didi is amazing. Yeah, not much bad I can say about it. It's a pretty normal romance, and I enjoyed it. This edition also contained the prequel novella, Out of the Gates, which focuses on Dermot and Ada, which is Vaughn's grandfather. And it was okay, in my opinion. I'm not big on age gaps, Not that I don't like an age gap, but the particular age gap where one of them grew up in front of the other, not that there was a romance attraction at that point in time, and then they're an adult and then you're in love with them. It's okay, it's just not really my trope of choice. So yeah, there is an age gap for those that care about those things, so just keep that in mind. And it was okay, also very entertaining. Romance novellas normally don't work for me because I like character building and relationship building, and with a romance novella specifically, there's not enough time to establish a good relationship. So when it comes to I'm in love with you, it's very hard to believe and to really, really believe these characters are in love if it's not executed correctly. This one was fine. I enjoyed it. Next up, I read The Ginbot of Shanty Port. It's not hit the mic down the road. This book, I was so disappointed in this book. I had high hopes for this. The concept was promising. The execution, in my opinion, not so much. There's very good ideas here. It's a Aladdin retelling, and it's very a technological world. But the problem here for me was the point of view Samit Bazu, I think that's how you pronounce his name, chose. So it focuses on brother and sister, Lena and Bador, and it's told from the point of view of like an observation bot. I don't think this is a spoiler. And because it's done from that point of view, so you don't really read from the point of view of Lena or Bador, I struggled to connect to these characters and to care about them and to care about their investment and trying to save Shantyport. And so you sit with these long info dumps kind of things from the server bot trying to explain concepts to you, and you're like, but I don't really care. And that was my issue with this. There was some things in here that was like, that's not really necessary. What I did like was the Easter eggs. So there's a little Easter eggs of technological stuff in our world. I don't want to spoil too much, but think Optimus Prime, think Godzilla type of things, which was included here, which was kind of nice. Overall, it was okay. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. Wouldn't really recommend to my friends, but maybe out there is someone who this works for. So as I always say, reading is subjective, and so maybe it works for you, but yeah, it unfortunately, sadly, did not work for me. So next up, we have an audiobook I listened to right here, right now, from Georgia Beers. It was okay. I enjoyed it. It focuses on... It's a sapphic romance, and it focuses on Lindsay, who is an accountant and very strict. Things need order. Things need to be in a proper place. Not very spontaneous. And then obviously opposites attract when people move into the office apartment, the office building next to her, office space next to her, and she makes a connection with the boss lady in that for that work, and the story goes from there. It is quite emotional in the end. It does tackle some heavy topics of loss and how you work through loss and how people aren't always as they're portrayed to be. And yes, I enjoyed it. It was a good read. It's pretty fast paced. It doesn't drag its feet. And straightforward romance, nothing complicated. What you expect, you get. And yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Next up, we have Jade City. Now, when I started this, I was like, oh, this is not gonna work for me, it's too slow, which for me was a surprise because I like slow and I like character building and I like world building. And about 55% in, I saw what everybody was going on about that says this is good, this is a must read, and I can agree, it's good. It focuses on I want to say mafia style urban fantasy. It focuses on a family where two brothers and a sister, Hilo, Cole, and Shay. So Hilo and Cole basically takes over the family business. It's a little while in after their grandfather stood down, and people are trying to move in on a territory, and it's the politics and it's the mechanics that come into work trying to protect your family and your business and your traditions, and it's good. There's also a cousin involved, Andon or Andy, which I loved. He's such a great character. And they're all human. The characters feel human. You can understand the decisions they make. You can understand the anger they feel and the sadness. And it was beautifully written characters. And there's one character that I hope in book 2 gets what's coming to him specifically. Because every time you read of him, you're like, this dude, somebody just needs to get this dude. But yes, Jade City I loved, I enjoyed it. Andon or Andy is really one of my favorite characters. I also enjoyed Shay's character. She kind of didn't want to be part of the family business, got kind of sucked in, and is basically out maneuvering all of them. And I like thinker characters that strategists and that strategize. And yes, looking forward to reading book 2 in this. Loved it. Read it. Very soft magic system in this. So there's this jade that gives power, and it's explained fairly easy and fairly simple, so you don't ever feel lost. And yeah, very good, very enjoyable read. Then I read my first Brandon Sanderson book, which was Elantas. I enjoyed it so much. So I've just started my Sanderson series. My Sanderson journey, and this was so much fun. This was actually a surprise, given that one of the POVs, Harafin, is so boring to read from. And I say that because he's kind of a religious character. Well, not kind of, he is. And I don't really enjoy reading a lot of religious POVs because they do tend to be a lot of information you have to absorb, and you don't always agree with their point of views. But for this one, it's mostly just the info, and he's kind of a dry character. Like, when I say dry, it's like you want to find something in him to like. And at the end, we got there. We did get there. I did enjoy some of his character development. But in the beginning, Lord help me, every time his POV came up, I was like, rather go make a cup of coffee before I read this, which you don't really want in a book. But yeah, I loved Spirit, I loved Serene, and the premise of this book is basically there's a city within a city that used to be elegant and powerful, and then they got cursed, which isn't really what happened, but that's the best way to describe what happened. So then when you became a Elantrian, you became sick. You basically became a zombie, and you get outcast to this place where nobody cares about you. The place is filthy, and there's gangs that fights about the little food that there is that comes in with the new people, the new Elantrians that arrive every now and again. And if you get hurt, you don't heal because you're dead. So yeah, zombie town, and then the politics that goes on in the town, city outside Elantas, that deals with war that's coming, and how best to keep a person in power that's not the worst person to be in power, but also not the ideal person to be in power. It's really good. It's hard to explain. I'm doing such a crappy job of this. But point is, this was good. It's very slow in the beginning. Very, very slow in the beginning. But like I said, I don't mind that if there's still stuff that pulls you in, which this does with the 2 POVs, luckily. Otherwise, I might have DNF'd. But once it got going in the last 20% of this book, I was like, let's go. I'm finishing this. I'm not going to sleep until I've done completing this book. And it was really, really, the payoff in the end was really, really good. And yeah, looking forward to more to Sanderson. I think Mistborn is up next for me, the trilogy, and looking forward to that. Then after this, I read Terry Pratchett. So I have started my Terry Pratchett journey this last year, end of last year ish. So basically, I read 2 Pratchett books per month, and I kind of just do like 50 pages a day when I do start them in the month, because his satirical way of storytelling gets a bit much for my brain, and then I kind of don't care about the books. If this is my only read, is what I'm trying to say. If this is the only read I read, I get bored. I get bored easily. So what I usually do is I read it while I'm reading another book, and I'll just do 50 pages per day. And that's been working for me. I also have read them in publication order, which didn't bother me really, because I think of the way when I switched, I only read Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic on its own. Like, that was my main read. And then I switched to this new way of reading Pratchett books. And it's been working so much better for me. And I think that's why the publication order doesn't bother me. Also, it's nice picking up different storylines as you go through the series, instead of just reading one, either the Night Watch or City Watch, the City Watch or the Witches or Death or whatever their collections. I like this way. So, long story short, this month's first book was Carpe Jugulum, which means seize the jugular. And it's the Witches collection. So we have Granny Weatherwax, we have Nanny Og, we have Perdita / what's her name? I can't remember her name now. But basically, vampires come to Lanka, I want to say is how you pronounce it. And yeah, things happen. It's not as funny. I didn't find this one as funny as his previous books. It's a little bit more serious. It asks deeper questions. But it's funny. I loved Igor. Igor's character, when it first was introduced, I was like, oh no, if I have to read some of these, I'm going to lose my mind. But then I just love him. Love them. And he's good. The vampires are kind of different. I like their powers, their mind control. They can fly. He makes fun of normal things like garlic and holy water and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, don't mess with Granny Weatherwax. But yeah, I enjoyed Carpe Jugulum. It's fun. It was a fun read. Not the best read, but it was a fun read. And yeah, not much else to say on this. Then I listened via audiobook to Sense and Sensibility, and I didn't like it, which was a surprise to me, because before this one I've listened to Pride and Prejudice. I love that. But this one, I think it's what the book is about, which is mainly marrying your daughters off to securing their future, and about money, and it's the two things that I don't care about. So I think that this was purely a me issue and not so much a book issue. So yeah, I'm not going to dawdle on this one. Didn't really like it. The narrator was awesome. It's Rosamund Pike. She also narrated the Pride and Prejudice I listened to. She's amazing. Definitely listen to her audiobooks that she narrates. She does an immaculate job, but even she couldn't save this as like, no, it didn't work for me. That's all I'm gonna say about it, and we're gonna move on. So then I read Silence is Silver, which is a novella, which I loved and enjoyed quite a lot. This is by Andrew Watson, and he has a YouTube channel, and I'll link it down below. This was very good. Enjoyed it a lot, surprisingly. It's a prequel novella to his first book, The Harbinger of Justice, and it focuses on a character in that book called Bus, and I hope that's pronounced correctly. It's either Bus or Bass. I said Bus. It's probably Bass. Bass? Let's go with Bass. Don't kill me, Andrew. And this, you join in a couple of days before, I think it's 2 days before, or a day before his trial or his test to become an official Udal, which is kind of like a silent monk. And there was like 3 plot twists in this that I didn't see coming, and made me sit up and went like, oh shit. And yes, it's executed very, very well. Loved it. Already looking forward to his second book that will be published hopefully somewhere next year, early next year, which will be The Black Mantle. And this world, these characters, just love it. Awesome novella. Yeah, not much more to say about it. Then the final audiobook I listened to was AtSeventeen by Gary Hill. Loved it. It's a very easy romance, very easy listening. It's basically, what is the right word for it? It's like 2 tropes. One is rich and poor trope. I don't know there's an actual name for it that I can't think about now. Think about it right now. But that's the one. Rich girl falls in love with working class girl. And then there's also like 2 timelines. So you follow their story up until they split for college. Split meaning they went their separate ways to college. Because they weren't... Yeah, I'm not going to spoil too much. Yeah, so that's the one timeline. And then a few years after that, like 10 or 15 years after that, they meet again. And the rest of the book focuses on that. And it's awesome. I loved it. This was actually a reread because I haven't actually put it on Goodreads, so I thought I'll give it another listen and then I can add it to my Goodreads books. And yeah, the narrator is very good. Simple story. It's also a sapphic romance, yet again. And yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Then the second Pratchett book for this month was The Fifth Element. This was awesome. I gave it 3 at the end, but it's kind of like a 3.5, borderlining 4. It got a little draggy for me, and that's why it lost points. But it's the City Watch again. It focuses a lot on Vimes and his wife, Lady Sybil. They go to Uberwald, which is actually also where they go to in Carpe Jugulum for the vampires, but there's also werewolves and other creatures. There are more Igors, which is why I said if you read it like in publication order, it's nice how these creatures get introduced and these characters get introduced, whereas you would have only met them differently if you read it collection-wise. Carrot and Angua is on there, but a lot less. This one focuses a lot more on Vimes. There's also this one basically there's going to have to be a new king for the dwarves, and the werewolves start getting involved, and the vampires starting getting involved, and the politics starts getting involved, and Vimes is sent to Uberwald to make sure Ankh-Morpork gets the best out of the new king that is crowned, basically. So he's sent as attaché, or basically the main political party for Ankh-Morpork. And yeah, it was also nice reading about Angua's family. She's the werewolf, for those that don't know. And yeah, enjoyed it. The werewolves were cool. The vampires are still meh. But yeah, enjoyed it. Also a little bit more serious reading for a Pratchett book. There were some good one-liners. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. Then I read an ebook for a new release, The Snowball Effect by Haley Cass. Now, Haley Cass is an romance author for me. Her books are great. And this is her latest. So this one has characters from her first book, which is Those Who Wait. It's the first time we met these characters, and then they got their own romance novel. And it's basically, the concept is two unlikely roommates, two completely different types of people. What I liked about this as well, one of the characters, Emma, is plus size, and there's no derogative slurs towards her weight. She is a little bit self-conscious, but it is applicable to what's happening on the page. And she doesn't refer to herself in any negative way. Nobody refers to her in a negative way. And that's quite a breath of fresh air, because usually when these books, romance books, include plus-size women, they are called names, or they refer to themselves in a negative way, and that's just off-putting, which didn't happen in this, which I loved. And their story is just so cool. So it's Emma and Regan, Regan is the best friend of the main character in Those Who Wait, and Emma is also a friend of one of the main characters. Like I said, I would say, though, read Those Who Wait first if you're going to read this, before reading this, because this one has a little bit of spoiler for the first book, or the first book that she wrote. And I would say read that first. That's also very good. Can also recommend. 5-star read. Loved it. Yeah. And then we ended the month on The Blinding Knife by Brent Weeks. I love this book so much. I love the series so far so much. Surprisingly, from page 1 it pulled me in so much so that you struggle to put the book down. It's very well paced, very well world building. Book 2 basically takes place right after book 1, maybe a couple of days after book 1, and it's a bit more political. In this one you also get more like a university study classroom setting for Kip, who is learning magic. Well, not learning magic, learning to cast light and fight, and basically he's learning his magic, let's call it magic, for lack of a better word. And Karis and Gavin is part of more the political side of the story, and Gavin is the prism, who is basically can cast all colors of magic. In this series, magic takes the form of colors, and you can only cast so much until you basically have to die. It doesn't kill you, but you have to go to the freeing. So what happens is, the more light magic you use, it builds up in your eyes, and as soon as your iris breaks, then you can start going mad, and you can start endangering people's lives, and you have to go for the freeing. And I don't want to spoil too much. So the prism can cast indefinite magic. He doesn't have this limitation. Downside to that is he usually doesn't live long. The prison, she doesn't usually live long. Usually it's only 7 years. If you live after that, you will live for 7 more years. If you live after that, so on and so forth. And Gavin is very special. He's been through 14 years now. And we pick him up in his 7th year, is where his story picks up in the first book. That's where you join the storyline. And basically in the first book, what happens is somebody is gonna make war because they're not happy, as usually as things go. And Gavin is trying to set things right. He's trying to put things right in the world, things he perceives as wrong. Are they necessarily wrong? It's up for discussion. But that's what he's trying to do, and he tried to prevent the war. And I'm not going to spoil too much over there. This one also has a card game in called Nine Kings, which is very reminiscent of Magic the Gathering, which is a lot in this book, but it's not too complicated. Yeah. What I will say about this book, though, is Brent Wicks has this thing where all his main characters are basically horny teenagers. So they have a one-track mind, which can be annoying to read about. Does it annoy me? Sometimes. Does it get a bit much? Sometimes. It doesn't bother me too much, but I thought I would mention it because it does bother some people. Some readers, sorry. It does bother some readers. And there's especially, this world contains slaves or incarcerated contractual workers. Let's rather call them that. But they're slaves. Let's call the spade a spade. They're slaves. And the women tend to be, well, some men too, but the women mostly do tend to be sex slaves as well. Yes, so I'll just put that out there. But for the most part, even that for me didn't make this a bad book. Loved it. The ending has a major cliffhanger. A big twist, a big twist that almost makes you want to pick up the next book. But I will just wait a month or so before I dig into that. They are quite chunky. They don't look too chunky, but they are quite dense. The writing is pretty small. This one was close to 700 pages. So they can take a while to read. And yes. I do say they feel dense, but it's actually easy reading. Anyways, loved it. Read it. Definitely can recommend it. And yes, that's all the books I read in October. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Happy reading. Until next time. Ciao.